Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and start putting in my object, my instance methods right here. Now, again, I have to have a way to instantiate those. And in order to do that, I have to have an object reference because, again, you can have multiple iterations, multiple versions of that. And the system has to have some way of keeping track of that. So, again, I have to put in a little bit of um, working storage magic here. So again, I'll go ahead and put in my object control class 1 here, OBJ. Let's make this COBOL. Now I want to upcase that, and ordinarily you've been seeing me going back and forth with my backspace key and retyping that stuff. There is actually an easier way. I'm going to show that to you real quick here now. So I'm going to come up here to Edit and Advanced, and I'm going to say Make Uppercase, and notice that that satisfies the requirement there for that to all be uppercase. Let me give it a couple tabs here, and then I'm going to call this an object reference. And of course, object and reference are both reserved words in COBOL, so notice the behavior is that it always upcases all of that. And in this particular instance, I want to make an object reference to COBOL class, so I'll just double click on that and give it a period right there, and all of that is good to go. So now, let's start talking about how to instantiate that instance method. In NetCOBOL, we always reserve the word new, and that's across all of the languages. We reserve the word new for instantiation. So I'm going to say invoke COBOL class, and if I click on, or if I give it a space bar, you see this new here. So I'll say new, and then I'm going to return the object reference to this variable that I just created up here in working storage. So object-oriented returning, and my object COBOL class, and that is class 1, and that is spelled correctly, and this should be just fine, ready to go. Now that I have instantiated that new instance object, all I have to do is refer to this right here. I invoke this instance object to start working with my instance methods. So here's how that works. So I say invoke, and then obj class 1, and now when I press the space bar, you'll see instance method 1, instance method 2. So instance method 1 right here, and again I can duplicate that quite easy. Come back down here, obj, and I can pull out instance method 2 as well, and now I have just been able to make that work with all of my programs. So one of the things that I'm going to do here is, let's say I want to go ahead and create a breakpoint right here. Again, let's make a breakpoint. I'm going to change that real quick. I'm going to put my breakpoint right up here in the first line so that we can actually step through all of this code. So let's go ahead and build this. Now you can see in this particular instance it says on the build 2 succeeded, up to date, or 0 failed, 0 skipped. And basically it's gone through and done a build on class library 1 and console application 1 at the same time. So that's the nice thing about having all of your projects in one solution. The other illustration that I want to point out here is, let's say for example you had an accounting system. You could have one project as general ledger, or you could have one project as utility programs, another project as accounts payable, accounts receivable, and they could all basically have references to each other, but they could all be individual projects under the solution called accounting system or something of that nature. So again, the idea behind solutions and projects is pretty straightforward and pretty easy to understand and deal with. So I'm going to go ahead and say start debugging, or I can press F5, so I'll just click on that right there, and notice what will happen. you're going to go ahead and see the command window come up, and of course you see the debugger stopped on this very first line. I'm going to set this up so that we can actually see some of this work just a little bit easier. So if I go ahead and start doing a step over each of these lines of code here, you'll actually see them start going off and running in there. Okay, there's my static method 1, static method 2, stat instance methods, and of course I've got my object-oriented COBOL class. You can see information here on details of this object reference, and of course I can keep stepping through here, and now I'm entering instance methods and the next instance method. End program. So now you've kind of gotten an idea about a little bit about object-oriented. You've actually seen some object-oriented code. You can see that it's not terribly difficult. The one thing that you're going to have to understand is that there are some differences in syntax and some differences in implementation, but it is not terribly difficult to utilize, object-oriented COBOL with Visual Studio.NET. So let's go ahead and start moving on.